Businesses rely on consistency and predictability. The only predictability is that we're looking like a bunch of putzes to the world, particularly the United States.
Welcome back, everyone, to another electrifying episode of Tank Talks. I'm your host, Matt Cohen, and joining me as always is the one and only John Ruffalo. Get ready as we dive headfirst into the hottest news and most exciting headlines at the intersection of business, innovation, and politics. Welcome back to the Tank, John. Here we are at the very last week of work here in 2024. How you doing?
Good. I can't believe we're down to the wire of this year.
Down to the wire, but lots of bombs are dropping all over the place here, especially in Canada. Let's get right into it before we get into the spicier stuff. Chrystia Freeland resigns from her role as Canada's finance minister. Obviously, this came after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reportedly told her he no longer wanted her to serve as his finance minister, offering her another cabinet position, as the rumors have gone around. And she chose to resign instead, citing disagreements over fiscal policy, which we'll also talk about the federal budget that came out as well. And also in terms of the approach in dealing with Donald Trump's tariff threats, which we've also talked about. Now, this resignation was something that I don't think really people expected to happen so abruptly. But now as more talk has come out about what happened internally, it sounds like there was a lot more disagreement. And this is at the same day that the housing minister also resigned. So a lot of turmoil happening in the Liberal caucus. I guess the question for you before we jump into the replacement with Dominic LeBlanc and some of your thoughts you had in the Globe and Mail on that is, what the hell is going on, John?
All I can say is we're witnessing an implosion of the government, and not that it's unprecedented. I mean, we've seen these frictions before. I go back to Chrétien and Paul Martin, but they kind of held things together, and then ultimately Paul Martin, did take over. But in this case here, and again, I don't know all the details, but very clearly you're having this, the Prime Minister's office really running the government. And one of the interesting conflicts you saw on this, the $250 check, frankly, and the GST were not policies that were being promoted by finance. Those were being promoted by the Prime Minister's office.
Right.
And kind of overriding finance is highly unusual. It's supposed to be the other way around.
Especially in Canada.
Yeah. So am I surprised to see the content of the resignation letter on what she had wrote? No, because that is frustrating. And frankly, it was part of the issue when Morneau was overridden. If you recall, the whole stock option fiasco way back when, and then the passive income tax.
Right.
So there does seem to be a repeating pattern here of, do you let your caucus members run their departments because you entrusted them so, or really are they just simply repeating the policies that are coming from the center and you just need to accept it and support it?
Does seem like it happens often in the Liberal Party when you give off some of those examples. But the crazy part too is this all comes after we already had a delay in the federal budget. We had a massive blowout number coming out of the budget as well. And then you had this $250 check going forward and backwards. And then after she decides to resign, the person they put in has zero finance experience and didn't even seem to be the first person that they had in line for the job. It was the person willing to accept it.
It was the fifth. It was the fifth person. But by the way, I had Dominic LeBlanc tapped as the interim leader of the Liberal Party after an election.
Right.
Not the finance minister. By the way, I never expected Carney to be finance minister. I've said this many, many times. I don't think there is no upside for him whatsoever. The betting horse, and I don't know if we had talked about it, was Champagne coming in. And I was somewhat surprised that he said no. But then again, he's probably looking at that and saying, look, if you're not going to let me run it independently, why would I take that on?
Right. And you were obviously quoted in the Globe and Mail, where you've got Dominic LeBlanc, a longtime family friend and political ally of Canadian's new finance of Justin Trudeau, who has zero financial background. I mean, you were saying here's a guy that has never been in business and never been in finance, Are we getting basically someone who understands the position, or someone we just obviously going to be a lieutenant to Trudeau?
Yeah, what I find, amusing, first of all, he's no different than the predecessor, Chrystia Freeland, being the journalist. I get that. But after this entire fiasco, you would think that you would try to get someone with financial acumen, number one, so they did it. Number two, you know what I find very amusing? This same government was very vocally criticizing Donald Trump for surrounding himself with sycophants, etc. And yet you turn around, and again, I don't know Donald, so I'm not casting any dispersions with him, but the impression that you're given is you're surrounding yourself with party loyalists first and foremost. That's your priority, and not serving the interests of Canadians.
Right.
That's what's frustrating to me.
Okay, so then you've got a bunch of rumors now discussing this, potential resignation regarding Justin Trudeau. I personally don't think it's going to happen.
No chance. Zero chance.
There's no chance it happens. There's a lot of conversations around a bunch of LPs that have been dissatisfied with his leadership, and a lot of internal dissent. I still don't think it's going to happen, though. And I guess the question then becomes, okay, so what's the timing now on an election?
So I'm going to repeat my bold prediction. I think I said it to you 6 months ago, and I will repeat it again. There can't be a vote of non-confidence until there is a vote. Parliament is prorogued until January the 22nd. In my view, sometime after January 22nd, probably to the beginning of March, there will be a budget requesting dollars for the next fiscal year. And don't be surprised if you see this $250 pop up again, but who knows?
Oh, God. Okay.
The NDP now have a decision to make. First of all, if what I say is right on the timing, all they got to do is say no to one thing on a 1,000-item budget, just one thing, and you can call a vote of non-confidence. Why is that?
He was asked yesterday twice, and he still said he's waiting on tariffs.
Right. Of course not. And what's convenient about the timing is, if I'm right, and let's just assume for the moment that it is a March budget, and then they will call an election, it will be a rapid election because there are no coffers in the Liberals and the NDP. So they cannot afford a long election. So this suggests a spring election. It also has the convenience of solidifying the NDP leader's pension entitlements as of February. But more importantly, right now he's being castigated of being just a sycophant of Justin Trudeau. This gives him an opportunity to say, I'm angry that you turned down the $250. And by the way, I am my own person and I don't kowtow to anybody. And then he fights for second place. That's why I believe that's what's going to happen. And, hold me to the prediction, and I'm probably wrong.
Okay, well, he's had a lot of chances to do that before they took a break. And then you've got Trump coming in January 20th. Then they return back 22nd. I mean, how many more opportunities does he need to have before he ends up doing it, before he gets his pension? So
this is such a joke, though. My God, it's embarrassing.
So look, we're not a political podcast, but this is obviously taking center stage across the entire country. It impacts everything.
No, but it impacts. Businesses rely on consistency and predictability.
Exactly.
The only predictability is that we're looking like a bunch of putzes to the world, particularly the United States.
Right. Okay, so let's get into the details that came out in Canada's Fall Economic Statement that was released on a pretty chaotic day in Parliament, to say the least, as the day that Chrystia Freeland resigned. A couple of things that were noteworthy, I think, that we should talk about in regards to the Canadian tech sector is the $500 million over 4 years to help SMBs adopt AI via the BDC, $150 million over 3 years for global innovation clusters, $24 million over 2 years for a national AI institute, and the additional previously announced $2.4 billion AI package regarding building out the infrastructure, and also the renewal of the $1 billion Vicky program, which will be the fourth one, which, again, we spoke about last podcast. Who knows if that will see the light of day. And then this biggest one, which is this new program of up to $15 billion in loans and equity for AI data centers, backed by pension fund investments. I guess the question to you, John, is, we don't know if this will see the light of day, but
That's exactly
everything is moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it still feels like the incentives to get pension funds to put money into the infrastructure side is almost not really doing what everybody wants them to do, which is investing in entrepreneurial progress, not like bricks and wires and real estate.
Yeah, I mean, we're missing the entire point of the pension fund.
Right.
The point is, Canada needs to create an environment where a pension fund could actually invest and invest successfully, not trying to incentivize them with some scheme to give them a priority return. I don't want that as a taxpayer, but create the necessary conditions. Let's just look at, the taxation front, the red tape, all of the things that get us in the way of a successful business. Why don't we start with all of that stuff first? And you know why? Because that's harder to do. But trying to hand over a check and just what you just said, almost all of these things, maybe with the exception of the shred, really can, is it just marketing? Because will any of these things see the light of day with the change in the government? And they're very easily reversible.
Okay, so $15 billion in loans and equity for AI data centers. Give me a break. Give me $5 billion and go into agriculture, logistics,
Right.
healthcare, biomanufacturing, things that actually real people benefit from. I'm not saying these AI data centers won't, but by the time they get up and running, by the time they get connected into the systems, and by the time they add value to most of the SMBs, which is what our country is built on, it doesn't really seem like it's going to move the needle by the time we need it. So, let's jump over to something that was a pretty interesting article. Kudos to Sean Silkoff for writing a great piece in the Globe and Mail.
Yes.
Welcoming the $100 million club. Okay. So he digs up a bunch of companies in the Canadian private tech sector, a lot of them very well, who have surpassed over $100 million in annual revenue, making them more mature, obviously, and potentially profitable and stable than what he says were the previous generation of Canadian startups. And, they have not tapped the public markets yet, therefore giving this sort of pipeline of IPOs potentially coming out in the next year or so. So with a wave of huge IPOs in the backlog in the US side, Canada is obviously trying to find its footing to get in line as well. What are your thoughts here? There's a couple companies that were also in the 300 million plus revenue club. You got names like Fullscript, Geotab, Hopper, Point Click Care, StackAdapt, and Wealthsimple. The big question is, one, are these companies going to be able to break even or even generate real EBITDA, like a StackAdapt, which is incredible with high gross margins? And then where are they going to go public?
Yeah. So, Sean's intention from the article really wasn't predicting, is there going to be an onslaught of IPOs? His real intention was, we've been shitting all over ourselves, the last, 4 years or so about how, everything is doom and gloom and the tech sector is eviscerated. Well, just hold on a little bit. Now, the list of 71 that he listed, he acknowledges, a number of them are not profitable, a number of them are not growing. But the point is, there's a hell of a lot more $100 million plus tech companies today than there was 10 years ago. It's not a great predictor of the future, but he was really trying to make the point, folks, this is not a sector to really be ignored. Now, taking a smaller list, you just listed some of those names. There are some killer companies in there that I know very well, highly profitable, growing extremely well. The question there is, when I ask the entrepreneurs, would they go public? The general reluctance is, I'm not so sure. Life is kind of good being a private company, but they do acknowledge they have lots of employees, and maybe at the end of the day, they should go public, particularly those that are venture-backed. Those that are not venture-backed are basically saying, don't care, maybe, never will go public. The other thing, though, that the standard of going public in terms of value, if you were to ask me, if you are not clearly $1 billion of value and growing at a decent clip, it is very difficult and you might end up being stranded. And here is the challenge for Canada. if that statement is true, their choice is to go public in the United States. Now, my view has always been, if you were at $1 billion, go public on both exchanges. And you get the benefit on the Canadian side of stability of investors. And on the US side, you get the liquidity and the transparency of pricing. And when you combine the two, you actually get a really good result. So I do cross my fingers. I don't see, next year being a big onslaught of IPOs, but within the next 24 months, there is easily a half dozen on that list that look like very good targets.
Yeah, I think you're talking about a couple of things that these founders are thinking about, right? It's the liquidity for their employees, maybe their early venture backers and angels. They're looking at potential acquisitions to help grow their business inorganically and use that public paper as well as a value to them. Access cheaper cost structures, maybe with some cheaper debt financing as well. That gives them benefit as well. But there's a lot of fear among founders around quarterly reporting, market scrutiny, building up more of a PR presence. Just the cost of being public that got taken off your bottom line immediately, especially if you're listed on both Canada and the US, is hard when you're just breaking even, right? Or if you're trying to get to EBITDA positive. So there's a lot of things here. I think your one comment though, John, about the US versus Canada, I mean, Brad Gerstner from Altimeter says, if you've got 50 to 100 million of revenue, you should be going public in the US. I don't know if there's a lot of Canadian investors that would feel the same way.
Unless you could clearly see the trajectory, but otherwise you do risk getting stranded. And once you're stranded, I've been there. It is brutal.
Yeah.
It's hard to reignite. But
how many companies from 2021 that were public in the small cap range have been taken private, right?
One thing though is interesting, and I did mention it on a tweet, it seemed to resonate. Canada really needs to stop this tall poppy syndrome and this anti-success narrative.
Yep.
Whenever you're celebrating entrepreneurs, you get the same crew of folks that just poo-poo it, calling them selfish bastards and all of this sort of stuff. Like, my God, like the jealousies and the pettiness of folks that are contributing to the social welfare of this country through tax dollars, etc., is quite appalling. So many of the entrepreneurs also get worried that when you're public, you are a very, very tall poppy, and some of them just say, why bother with this?
All right. Well, we got the tall poppies comment out of the way here, John. Let's jump in to our 2025 predictions. I'm going to put you in the hot seat here with a couple rapid fire questions. You kind of answered the first one, but I want to get it on the record. What month will we officially have the next federal election in next year?
May.
How many seats will the Conservatives win? 200, 225, or 250 plus?
I was going to say 240, so I guess I'll go for your 225, but I think it's going to be up in that range. It's going to be one of the greatest number of seat win in Canadian history. Yes.
So I call April for an election. I call 250 plus on the other side there. Who will be the next finance minister? And will we have a Doge Canada?
Well, the next finance minister, assuming that there is a loss in the in this election, I don't know who that will be for the Conservatives. I think that would remain to be seen. I could only speculate.
Do you think it will be a politician, or do you think it will be a business finance expert, given what we've seen in the Liberal Party?
If you were to ask me, it would be a politician who has deep experience in finance.
Okay. Doge Canada, yes?
I would say yes.
Who's on that list? We'll wait to see, John. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll talk about that perhaps in a few months.
Will Canada become the next 51st state in 2025?
It's kind of, look, I don't laugh at the comment, but everybody calm down. This is how Trump operates. Doesn't everybody know by now this is what he does? And the one thing is clear. He is making a mockery of the current government. He's doing that very much on purpose. That's the part that I believe that, he intends. But folks,
you got to take it seriously enough by 20% to just give him the courtesy of being respected.
Yeah. I take much more seriously. If we don't clean up our act, those tariffs,
The tariffs are serious and the border.
that is very serious.
Yeah.
Like, you got to take that seriously. Absolutely, for sure.
Will we have open banking officially in 2025?
Oh, Jesus. We're only 8 years too late. I really hope so. I saw it again for the umpteenth time.
I know.
But if there is a change in government, that will be a high priority item for sure.
Okay. What private Canadian tech company will be first to go public in your list? I had StackAdapt, Wealthsimple, Hopper, or PointClickCare.
I would say Wealthsimple.
I would say StackAdapt. Will OpenAI go public? Yes or no?
Go public?
Yeah.
Not of their choice. So I'd say the short answer is no.
I'll go yes on that.
Yeah. And when do you think?
I think like Q4, Q3, Q4.
Wow.
I think they'll file like probably in the next 6 months, maybe. I don't know. I'm taking a risk on that one. But
Yeah, because
it has to.
I would
clean it up.
I would agree with you only if they run out of people trying to put in, the billions. But you just saw what happened with Databricks.
I did. Series J,
Gee, is that what letter of the alphabet we are?
the new IPO. Series J, yeah. Okay, and last question. Where will the S&P be by the end of 2025? Above or below 6,000?
Oh, I think it's going to be above in that.
Okay.
What's interesting is Trump doesn't correlate success by the normal stats of the economy, correlated strictly to the stock market. And those two may be completely uncorrelated. So I think he's going to do everything that he can to make sure that the stock market continues to go up, but it might have a hell-bent impact on the economy.
Yeah, it will be a bumpy ride, but I mean, there's forecasts out there anywhere between 7 to 20% growth for the S&P 500 for just 2025. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, last year was a pretty damn good year.
Definitely was. And all thanks to you, John, for giving us a lot of your time, and to our audience for joining us. Hope you had a great 2024. We'll see you in 2025.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tank Talks. We hope you found today's conversation as insightful as we did. If you're enjoying the show, we've got 3 quick things to ask of you. First, hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or YouTube. Next, follow us and stay up to date on upcoming episodes and behind-the-scenes content on social media with Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And lastly, share the love. If you found value in today's episode, share it with a friend or colleague who'd benefit too. Your support helps us bring in more amazing guests and keeps the Tank Talks engine running. That's it for today. Until next time, keep disrupting and innovating.